What keeps me up at night is if I were to make a mistake on design. If I design something that doesn't work or fails at some time, that's something that worries me because I know everything that goes into correcting that problem. So, yeah, what keeps me up is making mistakes on design or not implementing the design correctly and it doesn't work out the way I want it.
I would say the thing that keeps me up at night in terms of the business is always thinking about growth. I think that's with my role specifically with sales is how do we make sure we're doing right by our current customers, but always making sure that we're growing, helping them grow, growing our business, finding new customers. So when you're in sales, you're always as good as the next day. The scoreboard always is back to zero and those relationships are good. But yeah, that's what keeps me up at night. How do we continue to grow? And that's always going to be a challenge.
You know, there's so many different aspects of business that can interrupt your sleep. I think the biggest one is always, cash flow, because it can be something that's pretty hard to do. I remember when I started in my mosquito control company, the way I understood cash flow was I'd look at my bank account and I see, hey, I've got cash. And it was pretty easy. You felt better when there was lots of cash, and then you didn't feel very well when there wasn't that much cash. That drove some sleepless nights. Now that Sterling, we've been super blessed with success, more than we ever really dreamed of when we started Sterling. It's different, but it's still the same. There's so much uncertainty in the world, but really when you back it all the way back down is, it comes down to cash flow. And this is, the same for every business. It's like that service, there's just so many different aspects of managing that. And I think one of the ways that I've learned to deal with uncertainties that can come and that can be very unexpected is, kind of planning for the unexpected. I think where we're at now as a company is, we're kind of spinning around and looking at people. And this is why, for this year, hiring is one of my major priorities because it keeps coming back or one of the reasons that can prevent our growth in the future. So, that's going to be one of my focuses. And, to do that, it's what method are we using for hiring? What are we doing to train? How do we make sure that, one, somebody's a culture fit when they come, and then two, ensure that the culture continues to be strong. And then how do we make sure that we're a good place to work? Those are all focuses for me this year.
The biggest thing I'm focused on improving is the quality of products. It's a constant daily improvement of just looking to see what we can do better, any weaknesses we have, just trying to fix each issue along the way. And then the other big thing is just the quality of the light actually. So how do we control light? How do we direct light? And how do we shroud that light source as much as possible? So my biggest things are the quality of light, the quality of product, and fixing each step along the way.
Again, I'm a salesperson, so we're very much people persons. We always look at interpersonal relationships and things that we're doing. It's hard to remember to focus on the processes that you have in place, and processes are really what make a business function really, really well and allow you to grow and to scale. So this is something that I'm very focused on improving here at Sterling. Is our processes could always be getting better. How do we do things that we can measure and understand where the success came from, and then grow that and make sure that we continue it.
What behavior causes me to instantly trust you? It's got to be cowboy boots. Like, if you can wear cowboy boots, like, you're in. I think we can go back to our, some of our Sterling values, like culture-wise, it's like we believe in trust, but we define trust as sincerity, competency, and consistency. So I don't know if I have one thing that I could say that instantly earns my trust, but if I were going to pick something, it's something that embodies all three of those aspects. It's when somebody is sincere, consistent, and competent, you intrinsically trust them at that point.
A behavior that earns my trust is really getting to know people and a servant's heart, somebody that's actually looking to help other people out, just genuine people. And I have a natural radar for people that they don't have that, where they're braggadocious. It's always about them, the conversation. And I think that's probably most seen in individuals that have the ability to listen and sit back and not make the story about themselves.
I'm a I'm a big actions over words type of person. So the behavior that immediately earns my trust is when I see follow-up happen. As long as the effort was there and it's like, well, you didn't do this exactly how I was asking you, but I could see that you tried and you actually took my coaching or my instructions to heart and there was effort, like that earns my trust because, it's my job as a leader to make somebody better. If they're not doing the job to the level I need them to be, that's really on us as leadership to coach them or give them whatever they need to get it done. But effort is kind of a ticket to the ball game. So yeah, they earn my trust when they show me that they're willing to try.
So when I think about complexity of business, I always go back to systems, processes, and people. A friend of mine, Brett Gilead at Elite Entrepreneurs, had signed up for some classes through him, and he drilled it into me. And it's business is systems, processes, and people. I think what gets forgotten is the complexity of how those three things at any one point in your growth, something in there starts to break down. Like what worked before, like when I first started out in business, it really was before we had online CRM. So everything I had was on paper. It was a paper process, and the system was an Excel spreadsheet, QuickBooks, and an order in which you put the paper on the desk. And, as we grew in my other business, what started to happen is paper got misplaced and things started, what really worked well for, maybe a few hundred people customer-wise, did not work when it was a few thousand. We started losing things. So I think that how systems and processes and people integrate with one another and how you can try and compensate for deficiency. For instance, a good system will compensate for not having your people well trained or not having necessarily the right person in the right role. But eventually, as you grow, it does start to break down. And you can, like in my other business, we used to try and compensate for the workload when we had really poor systems. We would compensate by hiring a lot of people. And obviously, what happens to your bottom line when you do that? You don't have much of the bottom line. And so, I think that gets underestimated. And I think oftentimes as business owners, we don't really look at and think about how do my systems, processes, and people relate to one another and how do they work together and the complexities of how they interact and not being intentional about, organizing that.
I think for our customers, I would love for them to understand. Our goal at Sterling is to elevate the landscape lighting industry. And I think part of doing that is helping customers understand how they can do that within their own businesses. So we're always trying to produce the best quality products for them to use. But in order to help them elevate, we have to go beyond that and be more of a partner than just a manufacturer and just a supplier. I think I'd love for our customers to understand what they can use us for beyond just buying lights. We are here for a lot of other things for them, and we want that relationship with them, and we want to be able to help them with their design and with whatever business challenges we can so that they are very successful and we're elevating the landscape. I think our employees are all in on the mission. I think they could understand folks in the sales department that I work closely with every day. They probably need to understand a little bit better the process that we are looking to grow, by which we're looking to grow, where the priorities are. I think I could do a much better job of helping them understand that so that they know where to spend their time. There's so much that we can do every day. If you're chasing the things that you think are great, but it's just keeping you busy, you get to the end of the day, you've been busy, you haven't been really productive. And so helping them understand where the best use of their time is, what's going to get them the best results, I think that's something that we can definitely work on this year.
Biggest thing that I've been advocating for years is focusing on the quality of light. And I think it's the beauty of light and truly seeing why pure light, when it's done perfectly in its natural colors, is what brings out nature the best. Getting back to the basic aspect that quality of light is the number one thing of importance to a lighting designer.
I think what I would like to be able to do is better communicate what our value is as a brand. Sterling is something that's unique within our industry. It's unique as a company, and everybody can say that, but the way we do things is different. It's a product of the environment that we started in. That's something, it's why is a dedicated luminaire the right fit for a design install firm? And why does that, what value does having that luminaire, how does that effectively improve your business, make your operations easier, make future growth easier? We need to do a better job of communicating that so that people understand, like, the value comes not just on that install, it comes years down the road when you're not stuck running and doing service calls and you don't have enough time to do full installs.
One thing that I thought that would really improve our product line was having a potentiometer on the outside of the fixture, or having potentiometers to set the lumen output. It just seemed like having that degree of control made a lot of sense, but in the field when I put it in, the issue was getting the consistency from one light to the next, that we had so much variances on the dial that we weren't matching up lighting perfectly. So I went into expecting potentiometers to be the best, and went back to our original technology of the step control system.
I think one of the things that, when I look back at decisions that I've made that I was 100% sure that they were going to work, usually revolves around a shortcut that I was taking from what I normally do. And the shortcut usually involves systems, processes, or people. When I've tried to circumvent that, going like, I think I could save some time and just kind of get a leg up and do this, that's when it's come back to bite me. The cliche is hire slow, fire fast. That's true. When you look at systems, being intentional about your selection of the system and not just trying to freewheel it and figure out, like, kind of build the plane as you go. There's value to taking a little bit of time and going like, all right, how are we going to organize this in a system? And the same thing with a process. Delegating, not being intentional with the process, how that workflow is going to happen, what people are going to use what system in what order, not being intentional with that and just kind of letting everybody, try and figure it out on their own. It's like, it might work for a little bit, but eventually that breaks. And so those are things that have caused me to have regrets in business.
I brought like 5 ideas right off the rip to Sterling when I came over that absolutely did not work. And in fact, I think there was a comment from me sometime around December with Damien where he was talking about something and he was like, yeah, and then, we have to put that back in place because somebody a year ago decided to remove that process. And I was like, was that me? Oh, yeah, that was me. And then I think I asked him, like, why in the world did you listen to me a year ago? so brand new. And he was like, that's a great question. So there have been a lot of things in leadership that didn't work. It's okay. The goal is to learn. And if you learn and then learn from your mistakes and you understand why they didn't work, that's okay. Mistakes happen. Everyone makes mistakes.
When I think about my own self-improvement and what I, need to learn, like when I first started to get into a leadership role, I was a wildland firefighter in the U.S. Forest Service. And I remember on, the hand crews, the type of work that I had to do when you're managing 20 guys on the ground in a fire scenario, you end up working twice as hard as everybody else. And you just go up and down the line, making sure that we're going in the right direction, making sure, you have lookouts posted, making sure that the line, the fire isn't going to cross the line behind you. You're moving up and down the line and you're being very integrated into like the workflow that's happening. And that's something that I took with me. It's still an amazing thing that I learned in that environment. Or what I've learned now is that, as you grow in your leadership ability, as the org gets bigger, it gets harder to be involved in every single aspect. When I was on the fire line, I could do each one of the jobs that everybody was doing. And so I could come alongside and teach people and coach them as we're doing the work, and because I knew more. And that's something that kind of, I think you take for granted as you're growing through. It's like, generally speaking, you tend to be, you're the leader and you know the most about each aspect of the work. Still think it's good to know a lot about that. I think as you grow, you go from being the leader of a team to being the leader of leaders. That's a mind shift where, it's not you're surrounding yourself with the people that are going to help you to accomplish a goal, and you shift over to, setting a goal and then encouraging and coaching your people to coach the team to kind of move towards the goal. And and I think that's something that it's a hard transition as a leader, especially when you're coming up from a solopreneur. You go through the different stages of business, your leadership has to change. And that's always hard because changing is hard, and learning new ways to lead is very difficult. So that's kind of one of my things I've taken away from this journey.
The number one thing that I think I had to take a step back from was not making about myself. I'm naturally competitive. I want to be the best at what I do. And just understanding that working in collaboration and helping other people achieve goals that they want to achieve and their success is ultimately going to be most beneficial for me. So just taking a step back from my own ego and allowing other people to shine around me was just a lesson that came with wisdom and some age.
Specifically in leadership, I think my biggest aha moment, or like what didn't work, was coaching everyone the same way. If you wanted something specific, coaching everyone the same way is something that doesn't really apply. I think that there's a tendency with leadership to think like, cool, this is the message and here's how I'm going to coach you. So I'm going to be like the rah-rah leader, or I'm going to be the really stern one, or I'm going to coach you, what people would consider like more micromanagey, or I'm going to give you, the opportunity to like be a part of like the plan. Those are all tactics that can be used, but I think the biggest failures I've had as a leader is like assuming that everybody's going to respond to the same type of motivation. Some people really do need encouragement. Some people, they don't want the autonomy because they're pretty kind of scared of how to do things, or they don't know and they're unsure, and that autonomy just makes them even more anxious. And so then they fail because you haven't given them enough of a direction, and you're doing that because you don't want to be super strict. But at the end of it, it's like this person actually needed that. They would have felt more comfortable in that, and you would have done them a better service if you had done it that way. So that's been some of my biggest failures.
I think a value that is essential to protect is integrity, of doing the right thing. And often, whether it's on landscape lighting, design and installation, that sometimes if we make a mistake, we eat the cost, or if it's on the product side, that we do what we say we're going to do. And I think if you lose integrity, if you lose trust, you're never going to get it back. It's a one-time shot. And so always trying to live a life with integrity, one that I could be proud of what I did. So there are times where that's not the easy way out, and that's not financially advantageous, but I think that's really the most important thing.
When I think about our company values, our core values, to a certain degree, our core values really look a little bit like, patent my personalities, and there's a big influence on that. But, the first one that we've always taken to heart is taking the initiative. What that looks like is that, we prefer action, over necessarily having something perfect or perfectly correct, or we want people to make decisions, and this, you've got to have consistency within the culture for that, because you're not looking for lone rangers just, taking initiative and just doing their own thing, but like taking initiative with the purpose of the company, with the goals that we've set, and the priorities that we have for that year. When you have things defined that way, and you have consistency within the culture, then what we really want is taking initiative, not waiting for to be told. And and I think that sets the tone for the type of company that we are. It's probably it was actually like the first core value that we articulated, but I think that's one of the most important things to us culturally as a company, in that we're going to take action that's in according with our purpose, and you have to trust people to do that, which is that consistency, competency, and sincerity. But when people have we have those three things with people, like we expect them to take the initiative and own the outcome.
Maybe culture shows up on the balance sheet in some way with sales or with results, because a happy team is gonna, a team that's working well with great culture is gonna produce results, but kind of hard to really find where on the balance sheet that shows up. But I think culture is what I'm really proud of in terms of building a place where people feel like they're part of something. I think, culture isn't about just being noisy and animated and jumping jacks and smiles. Like, people think culture, they think of like the cheesy kind of stuff. Culture to me is like, do you feel like the work you're doing is meaningful? Do you feel like you're part of a team? And do you feel like you're appreciated? You're in a place where they expect excellence. And if that's all those boxes are checked, you're going to have a pretty great culture. And I think that goes unnoticed sometimes on the balance sheet, but I'm proud of it.
I think one thing that I'm proud of that isn't seen in our balance sheet is just the attitude that people have. I constantly hear from our customers that our team goes above and beyond what's expected of them. They have that heart to really, make certain the company's looking good, but, really helping other people out. And so that's just an attitude that's permeated throughout our organization, and it doesn't show up anywhere besides, how we run our day-to-day operation, that our team is excited either where they can be of service or they can help someone, or when they see someone that does something that's successful and is something that I think it's taken a long time to cultivate. And one thing that I'm very proud of is in the Sterling Lighting organization.
I think one of the things that I'm most proud of, when it comes to running businesses, being an entrepreneur, that doesn't show up on the balance sheet is your investment in people. One of the goals that we have at Sterling is that our people, we love them and we would love to have them here for forever. I was like, but we want to build them up, improve their skill sets, and help them become the best version of themselves, so that when opportunity does come for them, that they can take the initiative and be prepared to step up. Lord willing, we're going to be creating those opportunities for our employees to move up and take on greater responsibilities and build their skill sets within the company. But our expectation is that our people grow because they were here, and because they grow, that new opportunities are afforded to them. And that's not something you see on the balance sheet, and it's not saying that we want to lose all of our employees, but we want to see them grow. Once we're done with this endeavor and we come close to the end of life, like, we want to be able to look at not just like, hey, we built a company, it's like, but we helped build up people, and that's just not something you see on a balance sheet, but you see it in the impact you have in people's lives.
What I'm preparing for is the new product line. So the American-made product line with the upgraded LEDs and optics, and the next level that we're looking for optical control. So it's something we've been working on for a number of years, and we're really close. So while most of you haven't seen it, I think it's just such a great story, because I think it's foundational to our vision at the very beginning, and it's important to each one of us in our organization that we were able to bring back the original vision of really having that control inside of our company and supporting our neighbors and our American workforce.
When I think about what we have coming up that customers have no idea what's coming next, I think of a few things. Probably the biggest one that probably customers have the most thoughts on isn't my systems, processes, and people, like what are we doing there, but is probably the Sterling Summit. Like, we keep setting the bar higher. The question is like, how do you top that? And that's a question like we work on and we really try and think through, because we want each year's summit serve our purpose, which is elevating the outdoor lighting industry, building up entrepreneurs, helping them to grow their businesses and impact their communities. And so we're trying to, think through that. And, I really do think that people will be excited, and, people that have come to every one of our summits, will come to this coming year's summit and be wowed and amazed again. So that's the first thing that comes to mind when I think of, what do customers have no idea that's coming? It's like, well, the summit's coming, but you don't know what it's all about. It's going to be different.
What keeps me motivated is an actual love for lighting design and a loving the creation that we make with lighting, the impact we have with lighting. So I love it for myself, but then I really get exciting watching others grow. And I've seen so many people that we've been working with for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, and how they've advanced and really became elite lighting designers. So I think that's always something that there's ups and downs and hard times and things that don't work out. But when you see our customers who have really partnered with us and see them growing, their business is growing, but also their artistry and lighting is growing, and where they thought they were to where they're at now and the giant steps they've made is one thing that's truly motivating, even in all circumstances.
One of the things that keeps a entrepreneur going is camaraderie, being able to do the hard things with friends. Something I always say is that adversity is more fun with friends. And I truly believe that because, there is good that comes out of adversity and the hard things. And it's getting to go through them with the people you trust. There's no other way to come up to build those friendships and relationships than going through those things with your friends. And so, it's like, Pat and I and the rest of the team at Sterling, like there's been a lot of hard things and many really hard challenges and times where we're like, are we gonna go bankrupt? And just, like we had no idea how we were going to get through the adversity. Because we were doing it together, that made all the difference. I can't imagine going through the hard things and trying to do it without friends. And so I think that's the biggest takeaway. In business, you lead people, which can be really difficult, but also really enriching. In our specific business with Sterling Lighting, we lead people and we design luminaires and we manufacture them. They both are rewarding in different ways. One of the harder things about designing a luminaire, my mind doesn't quite work the same way as an engineer's mind. Engineers tend to be very logical and very, deliberate and exchange and it's like, well, if we do this, we got to do this, and they're always, thinking through the trade-offs. I think it's really fun to see the result when you get it right, but as my participation in the design process, I've had to pay a lot of tuition because there's just things you don't know that you don't know, and as you find it out, you realize, oh well, that was a bad decision way early on in the engineering process. You don't know it when you're trying to coach the engineering team on what you'd like to see accomplished, and it's like, obviously I come up on the operations side of business, which is where I spend most of my time. And so it's just different. Developing a luminaire is hard because it's all about trade-off, and it's not, you really want one thing and then you go like, well, if you do that, you're giving this up. And then so trying to lead when you're trying to strike a balance between wants and physics, it gets a little difficult, because you don't know if you made the right choice once it all comes together, and then if you didn't, it doesn't work, and then you're back to the drawing board. I think leading people, in the operations side is, I think it's easier to a certain degree because it can be more fluid and people are dynamic and they can pivot. It's kind of like coaching a team. Like I love coaching my kids basketball and teaching my kids to surf, teaching other kids, basketball and surfing, and it's just like those are things that I've just really enjoyed, and and I think that carries over into business and build up the next generation and of leaders within the organization and entrepreneurs, and it's fun, but it's like it's two different lines of work, but we do them both here at Sterling.
I think in 5 years, my hope is that Sterling Lighting truly changed the lighting world. We did things that nobody else was even thinking of. We've set standards in quality. We've set standards in how lighting design is done. And I think in the next 5 years, we will elevate the lighting industry to the highest it's ever been, having the products that are really the best that's ever been offered. And I'm just proud to be part of an organization that is so focused on building the very best and truly setting the standard of what lighting should be.
I think My hope for that in 5 years is going to be the same as really my hope at the end of the year, which is they helped to elevate the landscape lighting industry. They didn't just make lights. And so the way that we do that and the way that we get there and people say that is going to be by being a partner. And I hope that in 5 years we'll have more people saying Sterling as a company made my designs better, made me more confident to do things maybe in design that I wouldn't have done before, maybe think about things a little differently. And then they gave me the tools to get it done, right? So whether that's us doing design and rendering on the, for them and helping them with that, or providing whatever tools they need in the field to get it done, new lights, new solutions. Like at the end of it all, it's like if Sterling was able to make me better at what I do, that would be pretty cool.
When I look into the future and I wonder what our customers will say about Sterling, what we strive to do is that they look at their own businesses and they look at their own design skills and they look at their own customer base and go, wow, like I am so much better at what I do because of who I worked with. We're just we're a lighting company that's distributing and selling luminaires, but our purpose is to elevate the industry, and our heart is to see lighting designers that design install firms like grow their businesses. And if we do our business right, our customers are going to look back 5 years from now and go like my business is so much better off because working with Sterling Lighting. That's my hope.